Hi, I'm Erica Toelle of Cayman Consulting here at the MetaVis booth at the Microsoft SharePoint Conference 2014. With me today is Ruven Gotz, who's the Director of Collaboration at Avanade. Ruven and I were just talking about a common problem we face with customers where their initial SharePoint deployments are very disorganized and they would like to know how to fix that issue and where to go from there. So Ruven, what would you tell those customers?
So I actually have to do that quite a bit because customers are not that happy with their SharePoint installations a lot of the time because they can't find what they're looking for. I mean, SharePoint does a lot of things, but the bottom line comes down to being able to find the stuff that's in there once you've put it in. So they have had this kind of Wild West. I mean, we've been hearing about it for a long time, and it's not driving value because they can't find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So we've been doing these IA roadmap sessions where we come in and we actually talk to the business, right? We want to understand what it is they're trying to use SharePoint for and how they work with it. And then we start to work building out the IA. So some of the things that I do is I give them a little talk about what metadata is, because a lot of people just don't understand what metadata is. Mm-hmm. They just want to talk about it. They just don't get what it is. They just want folders, that's what I was going to say. And it's, they don't get why or how it would drive value. So I give a talk that explains in layman's terms what metadata is and what value it could potentially drive. And then I give them homework. I tell them to go and take a look at their folder structure, to go look at their the terms that they use in their titles or other types of keywords that they use on their own or the way they think about their documents. And I ask them to note those and bring those back. Another kind of trick I tell them is, imagine you had a whole bunch of the same documents scattered on the floor. Mm-hmm. How would you tell which one was which? What would be the quickest way to sort them or organize them?
Right.
So I use those different techniques to ask them to come back to me with potential terms, structures that we could use. And then I use mind mapping techniques to interactively with them build a map on the screen while we're dealing with the homework to help them see that structure, see what works and what doesn't, and build out a map of their content and the metadata involved. Yeah. And then we make some adjustments on that, we go back and forth, we check it, and then we start to build on that. And that becomes the first step for how they're going to structure their information and how they're actually going to help search do a better job of bringing back the data they need.
So, what would be a realistic expectation of how long it would take to make that change? This sounds like something that takes a while and you can't just fix it overnight. So how long does this typically take?
It depends. That's very varied. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on how many documents there are and what migration strategy we're going to use. Do we need to clean up a bunch of things? Do we need to discard or archive or otherwise triage the content and figure out what we're going to do with it? Or are we going to use some of the tools that are out there, some of the tools that will allow us to automate the movement from an unstructured to a more structured storage area?
Right.
So really, it can be anywhere from weeks to many months, depending on the amount of content, the complexity, how many groups are doing it. Are we doing it with a pilot group, or is it just certain key corporate content, or are we going to go deeper and work with teams? It really depends. I hate to give that answer. It's such a SharePoint answer, but...
So Ruven, if people want to learn more about information architecture, how can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at RuvenG, RUVENG. I have a blog, spinsiders.com/RuvenG. Or you can write to me, ruven.gotz@avanade.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ruven, and have a great conference.
Thank you so much for having me.